next presentation will be about Angular end-to-end testing, how we should do it. Okay, guys, go.
Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Gábor Smetanko.
My name is Sándor Vasi. We are software developers from a small Hungarian company. We are developing Angular since the very early days of the framework. What else should we tell about us? Gábor is a big fan of BMXing. I have an old Volkswagen camper van, which I like to drive, but unfortunately nowadays mostly to the car mechanic. In our free time, which does not exist nowadays, we do like rock climbing and for sure developing Angular applications. After this small introduction, I like Gábor to jump into the middle of the presentation.
Okay, thanks Sándor. So I hope you enjoyed your break and had some nice pizza and beer. So before we jump in, let's just do a little questionnaire. Oh yeah, sorry, wrong question. So the real question, how many of you have actually know what end-to-end testing is? Okay, that's the easy one. So how many of you have actually written end-to-end tests yet? Okay, that's still a good number. How many of you have done it of his own will, not forced by his boss? Oh, okay, okay. So yeah, after this, let's just, because most of you have raised your hands, I will just quickly try to summarize what end-to-end testing is, and then we will jump into how this all works in Angular. So what is end-to-end testing? End-to-end testing is a kind of automated testing. You run your tests in a real browser, and typically you start up your whole application, including front-end, back-end, middleware services, so the whole lot. And most of the time you don't do mocking because you really want to see that your whole application is working as a complete unit. When we do end-to-end testing, we most of the time test user interactions. So we want to simulate what a user would do. So basically we do actions that a normal user would do. There is one important thing to remember, however, that end-to-end testing is not the holy grail of testing, so you should use it wisely, because end-to-end tests tend to be slower because they simulate real user interactions in a browser, so that's usually slower. You need to start up a lot of things, and because of that, if you can, you should test your smaller components with unit tests, and only test the main user interaction flows with end-to-end tests. So that's end-to-end testing in 2 minutes. And after this, I'll pass it on to Sándor, who will talk about the Angular way.
Okay, basically the end-to-end testing, the Angular way. There are many end-to-end testing frameworks on the internet. Just Google for it. For example, one of the first search results will be the Selenium. I'm sure that most of you have heard about it already. But I tell you something, and this won't be a news either for many of you. The Angular guys have developed their own one, which is called Protractor. You could raise the questions, why do we need yet another tool if there are already many of them on the internet? The reason I believe Protractor is a really powerful tool because of 2 reasons. One of them is that, well, let's remember first how we did it in the very good old days. We wrote XParsers and CSS locators to be able to locate HTML element in our source code. This was most of the time a nightmare. It was hard to maintain, and when the designer came and messed up the whole HTML, our whole test suite just collapsed. But fortunately, in Angular, we have really good ng model, ng binding, and repeaters, which let us identify the HTML elements more precisely. compared to the old Selenium base. So basically the locators what provided by Protractor are really good. I think this is the one reason, and the other one is called automated waiting. I don't know if you still remember, but one difficulty was when we did end-to-end testing earlier with Selenium, for example, that we always needed to fulfill our tests with sleeps and delay when we were testing asynchronous calls. The Angular guys provided a solution for that, as I told before, which is called automated waiting. This is basically waits instead of us for the digest loop to finish, and then we don't need to care about it anymore. Basically, this is yet another 2 minutes how it works in Angular, but I think it's better to see how it works in practice. So we have a really special application that we're going to demonstrate now. You won't believe what it is.
Okay, so no Angular demo is good without a to-do application. So surprise, we have a to-do application for you. First, we will start with an Angular 1 demo to just quickly show the basics, and then we will move on to an Angular 2 application. So this is the to-do application from the Angular website. It's very simple. You can create new to-dos. Then you can mark them as closed, and then you can archive the tasks. So it is very simple. So let's see how we can write end-to-end tests for such an application in Angular 1. Actually, there is one important point. There is no real difference between testing Angular 1 and Angular 2 applications. The Protractor framework is the same, so you don't really need to do things differently. So I'll switch over to the right application. So this is a very basic end-to-end test. There are three main things that you should do in Protractor. The first thing is that you want to locate your HTML elements. It's basically, you need to find the element that you want to do something with. For that, you use the locators mentioned by Sándor. So this is one example. We want to find an element by its model, and we specify what the model is. There are other locators, like CSS locator, repeater locator. So the pattern is the same. You need to create a query, basically, that will give you back the elements. Now, once you have the elements, you actually want to do something with the element, and these are called actions. So an action might be like clicking on a button and adding some text to a text field and things like that. So Protractor and the underlying Selenium WebDriver gives you such actions. For example, this one will fill in a text field with the text first Protractor test, and then this other one will click the add button. So let's see how this simple test runs. I have a very basic npm setup here, so unfortunately it opens in the background. So, but you can see that all the tests have passed, so we are good so far. So that's it really in a nutshell. These are the three main things that you need to remember. So locators, actions, and I forgot to talk about the third one, so I will do it now. So the third one is that you did the action, and now you want to assert, make some expectations to verify that what the browser did was actually a good thing or a bad thing. And for that you use the expectations. For example, the total number of completed tasks should be 2 in this example. So that's briefly how you write a Protractor test.
Thank you very much, Gábor. It was a really nice demo. It was a great work, wasn't it? No, it wasn't. Actually, I'm not really happy with it, to be frank with you,
Oh,
because
sure.
I have two problems with it actually. If you remember a few slides ago, I just promoted that Protractor is really good at element locators and can locate us elements really specifically, but you are using here CSS locators. I think you could improve it. I'm really curious how you could solve it better than this. My other problem is a little bit more complicated. I think you know what this test does, but I'm afraid no one else could tell you what it does. Because what you do here, you are interacting with the HTML markup, but in the same time you are implementing business logic. You're just mixing two concerns, which is not a good and best practice. And that's why I'm a little bit not happy with it. Could you impress me, please?
Well, yeah, you've raised valid points. So I think I've got a solution for you. And, well, a picture is worth 1,000 words, so I'll show you the solution quickly. So this is my solution. What do you think? Is it good?
Oh my God, I'm curious, listening.
Okay, so design pattern. We like design patterns. There's another one now. And it's called page object pattern. A page object pattern, a page object is essentially an API for your HTML. It allows you to do certain things with the browser, interact with the browser. So it is a class, if we can say it in the JavaScript word. And the good thing about page objects is that they decouple the business logic. So what you want to test, this business logic is usually described as like a manager would do. And then you have the page object, which does the actual work. And that's where we put all the protractor magic. The good thing about page objects is that they are reusable. So you create a page object, and then you can use the same code in your different tests and test suites. So I think it's a really nice pattern. But again, let's just look at our to-do list application again and see how we could implement such a page object. So I switch back to the IDE. So I've written a simple page object for this to-do application. As you can see, it's kind of a class. It has some members. These are the locators that we've previously seen. And it has some nice methods that tell you what the business logic is. But if you only look at the method names, you know straight away what's going to happen within your test. And you don't need to deal with all the mess here, like how you access elements and how you execute an action. And that's a good thing, because if you look at the test we've written using a page object, it's probably a much cleaner test now. And even a developer without previous protractor knowledge can look at this test and he can understand what the test does. So we create a new to-do, then we click the add button. Now we should have one more to-dos in our list, and the new to-do text should be first protractor test. After we mark it off as closed, and now we should have an extra class done true on our element. So it's a much nicer way to write tests, and so this is what a page object is, and this is how you write a test using page objects. There are some best practices even with this design pattern that you should follow. And if you follow these rules, then your test suite will be probably much more maintainable than without them. The first rule is very simple. This is, if you did some object-oriented programming before, you have worked with classes. Usually you put one class in a file. This is the same with page objects. You should put one page object in a single file and no more than that. As I said, the page object methods should describe the business functionality, not the implementation details, and they should provide quick access to the elements on your page. So in order to achieve that, you need to give meaningful names to your page object methods, and try to move away from the visual things and try to describe everything from a business point of view. So one example is like if I have a blue button on the screen, which by the way subscribes to a service, then instead of calling it click on blue button, I should call it click on subscribe button, because tomorrow the designer might come and change it to a red button, and then your tests will not make much sense after that change. Another important thing is that the page object should only deal with your page, and your test should do the actual testing logic. That means you shouldn't do assertions in your page objects. Those belong to the tests. And I also mentioned this before, but if you look at the test or you give your test to a developer, they should be able to see what the test is doing just without looking at the page object. So your page object or your test should tell a story that should be easily understandable by any developer in your team. And there is one good tip, is the name is called page object, and that might suggest that you should create one page object per application page. That's not necessarily true, because you have smaller things in your application, like small components, directives, and usually, for example, one such example is a modal. You use modals everywhere in your application. You don't want to repeat the same thing over and over again, so you create a page object for your modals, and then you can use that modal page object everywhere in your tests. So that's it really, I think, and yeah, it's good to use page object.
Okay, thank you very much, Gabor. It was awesome, really awesome. Did you like it? Yeah.
No.
Are you curious how I feel now?
Yeah, tell me.
I would say a picture is worse than 1,000 words. What we have seen now is the first one, but I'm already tired watching so many to-dos and hello words tutorials on the internet, but I have no clue how it works in the real life. So I have something special for you.
Oh really, what is it?
Yeah, actually, as I told you before, and as I told you in the beginning, I'm a big fan of old VW camper vans. I have my own one, which I'm always fixing, and I always need new parts. And that's why I just put together an application just for myself to maintain the parts I'm looking for, what I need to buy from eBay, what I've already purchased, so I see how much I spent and so on. I write it in Angular 2, so just to make some fun. And I'd like to ask you today to show me how to do it, how to end-to-end test it, because it looks a little bit complicated.
Okay, hit me, show me that application, can you?
Yeah, actually the application looks not so complex, but it has a table. You can add and delete records, you can edit them, you have conditional form elements, which you never see in tutorials. You can deal with date fields, you can deal with drop-downs, pictures, things can disappear on the page, you can page the table, so it's a little bit more complex than a simple to-do. Show me something interesting if you can.
Okay, so you want me to test this application?
Well guys, how much time do we have left?
Infinite.
How?
Infinite.
Okay.
So I just jump in then and start it.
Good
Okay.
news for you, bad news for the
Okay.
Adam.
I only need 2-3 hours. And do you have time, Guy? Do you have time? It's only 2-3 hours. No, don't worry. Don't
let
too
him
much.
speak so much. I've seen it before.
Okay, so
I have a good news. I have the source code. I can let you.
that's at least
let
something.
you do it.
That's at least something. But I've got a better idea, I think. So I think I've got another solution for you.
Don't tell me that's in other design pattern, because then everyone will go home. At least me.
Well,
I will hand over the microphone.
you're lucky this time. Luckily, it's not a design pattern this time, but I want to introduce you our new tool that we've just released. It's called pageobject.io. It's a little application that lets you generate page objects. So you will not have to write page objects on your own. And hopefully it will make your life much easier as a developer. So why don't we just test your application then? Your application
Okay,
that you've
tell me
just
what to
shown.
do and-
So I'll load our little tool. As you can see, you have a text editor on the left-hand side. That's where you put your HTML markup. So let's just take...
I like just to talk and let you do the dirty part. So
Okay, that's
I
comfortable.
need to hold the microphone, you know, I can't work now.
Okay,
It's Friday afternoon.
that's a lame excuse, Shandon. Anyway, so we have our component. This is a component for the actual table that you saw on the screen. It manages the paging and lists all the elements. It's an Angular 2 application.
He knows better than me, but I wrote it.
Yeah, this is the first time I see it. So this is an Angular 2 code. We have quick handlers, we have repeaters, we have bindings, we have buttons, we have a pager. So it's a relatively complex application. So I just take this.
Well done, Shandor, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really nice, really nice. So I'll just copy this in here. I select my application type. I click the generate button, and there you go. There's your page object. It's a fully functional page object. Oops. It's a fully functional page object for your table that you can use in your tests. It tries to guess some nice method names for you, so that your tests will be descriptive. How do you like it? Was this fast enough for you?
Well, it's too fast actually. I don't need that many functions.
Okay, well, that's not an issue. We let you customize it.
I let you customize it.
Okay, thanks. So in the editor, as you can see, we highlight the element that you are editing at the moment. And if I click on another element, like this button, then the selection changes. And in the middle, various options come up that you can use to customize your page object. For example, you can disable certain things in your page object. So for example, if I have this odd button, but I'm not really interested in whether it is visible or not, so I don't want to check if it's visible or not, so I disable it. The test is updated, or the page object is updated, or we provide methods that allow you to check CSS classes on your elements. I don't think we need that now, so we disable that. And you can also use the previous and next buttons to walk through your HTML code like this. And for each element, depending on the type of the HTML element, we provide certain methods that we put into your CSS or page object class. There is also a nice set of keyboard shortcuts, because we like keyboard shortcuts. We are developers, so you can use, for example, the arrow keys to quickly go through all the elements in your page. You can see numbers next to each checkbox, and that's the keyboard combination, or the letter that you should press on your keyboard to disable and enable certain elements. And then you have a quick preview here, what we will generate for you. On a larger screen you would probably see it, the whole thing. So it lets you build a custom page object in 5 minutes, and this page object is something like 300 lines of code.
Now I'm impressed already, but what that smile is not happy.
Well, as you said before, there are certain best practices that you should follow when, for example, using different kind of locators.
So you mean I didn't follow them?
Well, I'm not suggesting that, but you can improve. You can always improve.
Thank you.
So what we have here is we call it testability score. It gives a score to your HTML, and it tells you how well we could understand your HTML file. And because, for example, if you used CSS selectors are not good, but sometimes the tool has to, so the tool tries to follow the best practices that we outlined before. So it tries to find your element by the protractor specific locators first, if possible. For example, ng model, binding, repeater, and all the rest. However, if we can't do that, we have to drop back to CSS. And CSS selectors are not always reliable. The main reason for that is that in this editor you don't copy in your whole HTML code. It's only just a small fragment, usually a components template. So we don't know what else is around that in your application. So because of that, we show you some warnings. Basically, we summarize which elements we are not sure about. They will possibly work because we try to use the most specific selectors, but sometimes they will not. So in these cases, you can just add an ID to the tag or add a name, and that will allow us to use better selectors. And if you would do the same thing on your own if you wrote protractor tests from scratch, because you need to find your elements. So you usually help yourself by putting on some ID or class or whatever that makes it easier for you to find the elements on the page. So yeah, if I click on the problematic elements, then it jumps to that element, and it gives me a hint, or basically improvement ideas, just the one I summarized, for example.
Okay.
So that's it, and now you have your page object, so you want to see it in action?
Yeah, I know that you are really happy to show me.
Okay, so we provide two ways for you. One of them is copy to clipboard, that will copy the whole thing to your clipboard, or you can download the whole thing as a file, and you can save it straight away into your project. Before you do that, you might want to give it a name, for example. That's something we can't find out automatically. So this is the part manager. Oops, I clicked out of the part manager page, and then it will rename the class. So you download this and you add it to your application. Although this is the first time I see your application, I've already copied in your page object.
That's why I like him so much, to work with him.
So yeah, so I go back here, part manager PO, and here you go. That's the customized part manager page that will be able to handle your table. I've got another one for your form at the top, and then an actual test with this page object looks quite simple. You require your page objects that you want to use in your test. So we have 2 page objects here because, as I said, it's better to have 1 page object per component. So, and here you can see that we have some simple tests. First, I check how many items do I have in the list. On the first page, I should see 10 items. Then I can check individual rows. Like the first row should have these columns. Then I should have 2 pages on my screen. And then I do some clicking on the paging icons. So I jump to the second page, then I check that on the second page I've got 2 parts, then I can go back to the first page and so on. And then I have an edit test and a new part test and all the rest. And as you can see, it's quite easy to understand it and follow the test logic. And it's very efficient to work with it because it didn't took me more than 20 minutes to write the whole thing, especially with an editor that has auto-completion. So I think it's really nice, so let's just run it quickly to make sure it really works. This application uses Angular CLI, so we just use the Angular CLI command to execute our test.
And have a coffee.
Yeah. I move it away so we can see the browser. As you can see, it tests our application. And this is what a normal user would do. So, and yeah, it was all successful, all tests completed successfully. So, I hope it was quick enough.
Was it quick enough? Thank you very much, Gabor. Could you tell me a few more words about this application, where I find it again, just to remember? And
okay, so you can find the tool. It's a free tool. We will open source the library whenever we have some time. I don't know when exactly, but because Shanda said we never have time. So go to pageobject.io, try to break it, test it. It's a very early stage, so we can't guarantee it's perfect, but if you guys give us good feedback and people use it, then hopefully we can improve the tool and make testing easier. So with that, I would like to thank you for your attention. We put online the 2 demos. You can access them on these URLs and give it a try and let us know how you feel about it. Thank you very much.
thank you very much.